After reviewing the play, the quarterback threw a backward pass, which was recovered in the end zone by the offense. It is a successful conversion.
The game of the year, one of the best games really in recent years, given the stakes last night in Seattle. And ultimately, part of the final equation was one of the craziest plays and one of the wildest explanations of a play we've ever seen. That 2-point conversion late in regulation that tied the game at 30 apiece. Seattle went on to win in overtime. They went for 2 after falling behind 7 and scoring, and with just over 3 minutes to go in the extra session, they got it, and they are in first place in the NFC West, and they control their own destiny with 2 games left for the 1 seed in the NFC. Good morning. That was honestly the NFL at its incredible best. You know, you had some of the best individual performances of the year, Matt Stafford, Puka Nacua in particular. You had an improbable comeback 30 minutes prior to the game actually ending, 30 minutes earlier. Seattle had no chance to win. You know, if you get into the, probability stuff that ESPN puts out, I think they had like a 1% chance, or maybe it was a little bit less than 1%, down 30-14 after a red zone interception by Sam Darnold, his second, and the Rams took over with about 9 minutes to go in the game, up 16 with the ball, and at that point, they had not been stopped. You had the crazy 2-point conversion, which we're going to get into because I'm not so sure they got it right. And then just an unbelievable recovery and redemption story within one game. It was, that's who we thought Sam Darnold was, to, oh my God, he overcame that narrative, and now he's clutch. Just thrilling, really, especially over the last 45 minutes of real time. 38-37, no doubt, in a season with great games. I mean, Tampa and Seattle played a game out in Seattle earlier this year that was insanely great, 38-35. We had some of those ridiculous comebacks like the Jets against Cincinnati. We had that Cincinnati-Pittsburgh Thursday night shootout. There have been great games all season long with new teams really participating in some of these great games in terms of being good teams this year. But last night's, without question, tops the list. A lot to get into as it relates to that game, because I think for me, I have a big takeaway from the game that didn't change from what it was heading into the game. A busy football Friday on the show today. We will certainly preview tomorrow's Washington-Philadelphia game. I think I like Washington to cover. The line is up to 7 in a lot of spots. I'll have my smell test picks a little bit later on in the show, but Washington likely to be in it. Got some college games too. Man, the Alabama-Oklahoma first-round playoff game tonight in Norman will be electric. They've already met 23-21. Oklahoma beat Bama in Tuscaloosa. It's really a matchup between, I think, the best defensive team in the playoffs, Oklahoma, although it's close with Ohio State, Georgia, and Indiana, against a team that really has limped in to the playoff. I mean, Alabama got spanked by Georgia in the SEC title game. They were lucky to survive Auburn in the Iron Bowl at the end of the regular season. They can't run the ball. They can't protect their quarterback, Ty Simpson, who is one of those guys who is lights out great if everything's going well. They're running the ball. He's protected. Play action's working. But under pressure, he's not so good. A real intriguing matchup tonight. This is one of those games where the team that makes the big mistake is probably going to lose the game. And then we've got a triple header tomorrow of college football games. I think the best game by far of the day kicks off at noon. Texas A&M hosting Miami. A very interesting matchup. The quarterbacks will be a big part of the story in that game, as will the trenches. These are two teams that are really good up front, both sides of the football. Then we get the two, non-Power 4 school playoff games Ole Miss, without Lane Kiffin, as a 17.5-point favorite over Tulane. They've already beaten Tulane this year, 45-10. And then James Madison, all the way out in Eugene, Oregon, on Saturday night, 7:30 kick, in a game in which they are 3-touchdown underdogs. But can they keep it close? Can they keep it respectable? That will be the true, even more so than Ole Miss, Tulane, David versus Goliath. And, of course, we've got an NFL doubleheader tomorrow with our team playing at 5, and then a massive game in the NFC North tomorrow night with Chicago hosting Green Bay before we get to a full slate of Sunday games. This is a powerful, busy football weekend, and it really, really got underway last night with a classic. So a couple of things about the game last night. It starts with this. The Rams were the better team, and they still are, in my opinion. They lost the game. I understand they lost the game. They needed so many things to not go their way over the final 9.5 minutes, 9 minutes in regulation, and then through overtime to blow that game that I just can't see it ever being duplicated. The bottom line is for 3 and almost 3.5 quarters, the Rams dominated Seattle. And it was so obvious why they were dominating Seattle. They had the much better quarterback. They were a better coach team. And Seattle just wasn't going to be able to beat a team like the Rams with Sam Darnold at quarterback. He was getting sacked. He was throwing picks. He was missing receivers left and right. And it just looked like Seattle is going to end up being a 5 seed or a 6 seed, however it shakes out. And they're really good defensively, even though the Rams move the football up and down the field. I mean, at one point in the game, the Rams had run 50 plays and Seattle had run 24 plays. Overall in the game, the Rams ran 88 plays to Seattle's 63 plays. They had a 40-minute, 33-second to 26-minute, 14-second time of possession advantage. They ran the ball, they threw the football, and really, if you watch this game, Matt Stafford threw for 457 yards with 5 dropped passes, just flat-out drops by some of the tight ends in the game. 3 touchdowns, no picks, no sacks. He was 29 of 49, so 20 incompletions, but again, 5 dropped passes in the game. And any one of those balls caught probably changes the outcome of the game. But the game and maybe the entire NFC playoffs flipped on one play. Seattle acquired Rashid Shaheed, the wide receiver, punt returner, kick returner from the New Orleans Saints at the trade deadline. And down 30-14 after getting a stop really for one of the first times in the game, the Rams, with kind of a benign punt with, just under 9 minutes to go, up 30-14, and Rashid Shaheed fields it and returns it 58 yards for a touchdown. Game on, because they made the 2-point conversion. And so it was an 8-point game. If they missed the 2-point conversion, it's probably not going to be a big deal for the Rams. They made it. It was an 8-point game. All of a sudden, you saw people coming back in to the stadium. They had exited, after Sam Darnold had thrown a pick right before the punt, and they were rushing back in to the stadium, Lumen Field. And the game was on from that moment forward. If Seattle ends up going to the Super Bowl because they play 2 home games and get a first-round bye as a 1 seed, that's the play that did it, because this game was over. And Sam Darnold had laid another egg in a big spot against the Rams like he did last year in the postseason, like he did earlier this year in the regular season. But all of a sudden, Seattle's great defense rose to the challenge. There's like 3 and outs galore down the stretch. They're getting 3 and outs. And some of it is because the Rams aren't executing. They're not catching passes. Some of it's on them, and they drove the ball and missed a field goal. The Rams gave up a 58-yard punt return, missed a field goal, had the absolute zany, almost inexplicable 2-point conversion, which we will get to. And that was just in regulation. But the Rams, over their final 5 possessions, let me just mention this because this is so rare, okay? The Rams had 6 possessions in the fourth quarter of the game. 6. And on their last 5, they went punt, 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 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, missed field goal, punt at the end. And I did have a problem with their last possession in regulation in a 30-30 game. But when the Seahawks got the ball back, they actually, didn't tie the game up immediately. They tied the game up eventually with about 6 minutes to go on a great pass by Darnold on a great schemed up play, one of those roll left, throw back rights to a wide open tight end. And by the way, that was after Rashid Shaheed took a pitch on a reverse and ran 31 yards with it. Rashid Shaheed was massive in this game. And then they got the crazy 2-point conversion with 6:23 left to tie the game at 30 apiece. Now, if you didn't see this play, it was one of those quick screens out to a tight end. The ball hits Jared Verse's helmet, deflects towards the goal line, and a Rams player almost picks it off, doesn't, and it's an incomplete pass, we think. Except that the pass was actually backwards. It actually was a lateral. And so after, at 30-28, the Seahawks are lining up to kick off. Meantime, the Amazon referee expert, is that Terry McCauley, by the way? I forget. I think it's Terry McCauley. He might be NBC. Whatever. Whomever the referee expert is on Amazon's coverage, Max, he was all over it. He's like, wait a minute here. They're going to have to look at this. This was a lateral, and there was a clear recovery by Zach Charbonnet, the Seattle running back, in the end zone. Now, when you say clear recovery, the ball was just rolling around in the end zone, and he just kind of bent down and picked it up, and he happened to have been in the end zone when he picked it up. He didn't know. He thought it was an incomplete pass, and he was just picking up the ball to throw it back to the referee. Play over. They were lined up to kick off at 30-28 when they stopped the play and looked at it and came back, and that's the sound we came in with. The head referee announcing that it was a lateral and a clear recovery. Now, I thought all along there's no way, even though it was a lateral and it was a clear lateral and a clear recovery, there's no way this play can stand because the whistles had to have blown. It was an incomplete pass. Ball hit the ground. Whenever the ball hits the ground, clearly hits the ground, the whistles blow. Well, they came back afterwards and said that the whistles did not blow the play dead. Although there are replays where you can hear the whistle blowing the play dead before Charbonnet picks it up. They let it stand 30-30. The game got wilder. The Rams missed a field goal. I did not like the Rams' last possession of regulation. They took over at their own 12, and they hit a big play, and they were all the way out to midfield. And they, instead of with Seattle having just one timeout left, it was in that moment I'm like, you can run the football here, Sean. You've been running the football all night. They're sitting back in nickel. Run the football. Get the clock rolling. Make sure that your field goal attempt ends up being the last play of regulation. Worst case is you keep throwing it and keep going hurry up, and you could turn the ball back over to Seattle with a lot of time left. And that's exactly what happened. They never ran the ball. 1st and 10 at the 50 with a minute to go in regulation. Seattle had one timeout left. They could have run the football twice before throwing it, or they could have thrown it and then come back and run the football. But they went 3 straight incomplete passes and had to punt it with 50 seconds to go. And then Seattle had a last chance in regulation, but Darnold once again got sacked, and that ended. And then the Rams drove the ball down the field and scored on a 41-yard touchdown pass to Puka Nacua. More on him in a moment. And then Seattle won the toss, did the right thing. I think it's the right thing, and that is opting to kick off with the new overtime rules. And when they got the ball back, they had the ability, even though they didn't face a 4th down, to be a 4-down team. And they made the decision with 3 minutes and 13 seconds to go after a really good throw by Darnold to Najigba, to Smith-Njigba for the touchdown to go for 2 in the win. Why did they do that with 3:13? They didn't have to do it with 3:13 left. The game would have continued at 37-37. It wouldn't have ended in a tie. The game would have continued. But the reason they did it is that they had lost to the Rams earlier this year. So a tie would not have helped Seattle in tiebreakers with the Rams. They would have obviously lost the tiebreaker if they lost one game and tied the other. So they went for the win, and they got the 2-point conversion on a pass. Darnold on the last drive, the drive in overtime, hit a great throw to Smith-Njigba on the sideline for 17 yards. Another one to Kupp for 21 yards. And then the touchdown pass to Njigba, and then the 2-point conversion. Sam Darnold, totally turned around the Sam Darnold typical narrative of he just crumbles in the biggest spots and he doesn't see it and he can't handle pressure. He got sacked in the game 4 times. He threw 2 bad picks. But he delivered at the end of regulation, and he delivered in overtime, and Seattle walks off 38-37. They could have kicked. I actually thought there was a chance because Mike McDonald's very conservative as a coach. If you don't know that about him, I think he goes for 4th downs less than anybody in the league. He's not a big going for 2 unless you have to late in the game, but he went for the win there. They could have kicked off in a 37-37 game, tried to get a stop and then win it on their next possession, but they decided to go for it right then and there. So for me, Puka Nacua and Matt Stafford were the biggest takeaways for me. Matt Stafford, for all intents and purposes, I think wrapped up the MVP last night. 29 of 49, 457 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was insanely good. He always is. And again, 5 drops. And he missed a big play that would have been about a 40 to 50-yard play when he got flushed from the pocket. But Stafford threw a touchdown pass to Puka Nacua at the goal line where it was a no-look pass. You'll see it if you want to, find it on YouTube or on Twitter. He uses his eyes. He does this often. Uses his eyes and looks in one direction and then throws in another. It was a no-look touchdown pass at the goal line to Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua has gotten into some trouble this week with some, TikTok videos and different things that apparently there's a lot of naivete attached to it for him. He also criticized referees last week and did it again after the game. Good God, is he elite? I mean, I think we've known this for a few years now. Puka Nacua was a 5th-round pick out of BYU. This was one of those receiver taking over a game performances. He is truly a great receiver. And there was no Devontae Adams last night. 12 catches, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a 58-yard catch, a 41-yard catch, and a 44-yard catch in the game. He is ridiculous. 114 catches with 2 games left, 1,592 yards. He is one true elite, dominant takeover game receiver. He's 6'2.5". He's 220-something pounds. He is so good after the catch. His speed is so underrated, and his route running might be the best in the game if Justin Jefferson's isn't. What a spectacular performance from Puka Nacua with no Devontae Adams against the best defense or one of the best defenses in the NFL on the road in that environment. He was spectacular. It's not, again, that we don't know as NFL fans how great Puka Nacua is. But last year, remember, he was banged up. He was hurt a bunch and, ended up with, a shortchanged season. I think he missed 6 or 7 games last year. But he's coming back right now in his 3rd season in the NFL with a superstar season. With 2 games left, it's not out of the realm, given that he had 225 last night, that he could end up with a 2,000-yard season. I still think, Max, after last night, the Rams are the best team in the NFC, and I think they're the best team in the NFL. And what's interesting about the NFC West is now with the Seattle win, the 49ers actually control their own destiny too, because they finished the season in Santa Clara against Seattle. That could be for the NFC West title. They play the Colts on Monday Night Football. They still play the Bears, the 49ers do. The Seahawks, meantime, have to go to Carolina and then to San Francisco to finish up the season. Not easy. And the Rams, the rest of the way, have Atlanta next Monday night and finish with the Cardinals. So the Rams will be favored big time to get to 13-4. And then we'll see what happens with Seattle and San Francisco. But here's the thing as you look at the NFC playoffs. The runner-up in the NFC West, whoever that is, if it's the Rams and Seattle wins the division, it could be the 49ers, it could be any one of the three. But that team is going to be the team, more likely than not, that will travel in the first round to the NFC South winner, Tampa Bay or Carolina. They'll be a hefty favorite. I mean, the Rams lost to Carolina 2 weeks ago, but they went into that game as a 10-point favorite on the road. They'll be a solid, if it's the Rams, a solid touchdown favorite over either one of those two teams. Seattle would be a solid 4 to 5 point favorite over either one of those two teams. I don't know what it would be with the 49ers. But my point is this, and not that winning in Tampa with Mike Evans back and Bucky Irving back, Ibuka healthy again, because the Bucs could catch fire here, and they could be a difficult out at home especially. But the point being, if Seattle ends up being the 1 seed, we'll see the rematch of Rams-Seattle, not in the NFC Championship game, more likely than not, but in the divisional round game, because one would play the 4-5 winner unless there's an upset from below the 5 seed line. But we could see that game in the second round, Seahawks-Rams. I still think, watching that game last night, that if Seattle and the Rams play 10 times, the Rams win 7 or 8 of them. What were your takeaways from the game last night, Max?
The Odyssey Christmas party was last night, so I didn't get to lock in really until the final portions of the game.
I had one as well, a family one as well. So, but I had the game on, and then at halftime went home and caught the second half at home.
There you go.
So go ahead. So you don't have a strong take because you didn't get a chance to watch
most of it, but I do still think I'm in line with you in that I think that the Rams are the better team. A lot did have to break Seattle's way for them to get that win. So, and plus Sam Darnold on third down, I believe he was 0 of 6 with 2 interceptions. So they're winning in spite of him, not because of him. And that's really, it's going to come down to that in the playoffs. Quarterback's got to win for his team, or he's got to carry his team a lot of times in the postseason. So Seattle may have gotten the win, but I don't see it growing much more than that.
Amazing what Sam Darnold did after the first 3.5 quarters of that game. I mean, I don't know if it's a career changer for him, but he delivered over and over again in the fourth quarter and then in overtime after, literally once again soiling himself in a big game. I mean, that was going to be a big takeaway. With 9 minutes to go in that game before the Sheehan punt return, it's like, man, the Rams are so good, and you cannot win a big game with Sam Darnold. He just doesn't do it quickly enough. You know who was really good? And I think I mentioned this to you, that the Seattle rushing attack has not been good this year. And I've been like, I don't get it, because Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet are good.
Yeah.
Walker last night was really good, had a 55-yard touchdown run. I think he averaged nearly 10 yards a carry in the game. But they just couldn't get the Rams off the field. 38-37, an absolute classic. If you watched it last night, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, I hope I did it some justice. It will certainly be one of those regular season games that goes down as truly memorable because of just everything that happened in the game. The NFL, man, just doesn't ever lose. It just doesn't. And we got much more of it coming our way this weekend and over the final 3 weekends. Believe that? Can you believe that? We're here and we've got just 3 full weekends of NFL football, regular season football left It's December 19th. Tomorrow's December 20th. It's the first of two in the final three between Washington and Philadelphia. Not exactly the stakes that we had hoped when the schedule came out last May. But I'll give you my keys to a Washington win over Philadelphia when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the team980.com. All right. Washington's got a game tomorrow against the Philadelphia Eagles. 5 o'clock kick in Landover. Weather won't be bad. Chilly, not super cold, and no precipitation, at least in the forecast. So the weather's getting nicer here as we approach Christmas after the last 2 weeks of it being brutal. But tomorrow, calm winds, low 40s, low to mid 40s. A nice December day for football after the heavy rains and even the rumble of thunder this morning, Max, I heard. So Washington's keys tomorrow to an upset win over Philadelphia. So let's keep something in mind about the Eagles. They had lost 3 games in a row, and they ended the 3-game losing skid against the Raiders. The Raiders are truly a terrible, terrible football team this year. They are 2-12. And they, had that game. I mentioned this, I think, the other day. Before Washington went to Kansas City and played the Chiefs at Arrowhead on Monday Night Football, the Chiefs had destroyed the Raiders the week before, 31-0, in one of the most statistical dominated games I've ever seen. 30 first downs to 3. The Raiders didn't pick up 1 third-down conversion. The yardage was a 4-1er. And then last week they played the Eagles, the Raiders did. Same deal, 31-0 exact score, 27-7 first downs, 387 total yards to 75 for the Raiders. Total domination. The Eagles basically had the week off last week in winning against the Raiders. I don't think that's the Eagles team that we're going to see tomorrow. I think the Eagles team that blew a 21-0 lead against the Cowboys and lost at home on Black Friday to the Bears 24-15, and then lost in overtime to the Chargers on Monday Night Football 22-19. I think that's the team that the Eagles are right now, especially while they don't have Jalen Carter on defense and some of their key offensive linemen on offense. They're just right now not, a full football team. They're going to get some of these guys back. That's you've seen some of it on Hard Knocks with Lane Johnson and the Liz Frank injury, trying to work his way back. Carter had, shoulder, treatment, and basically played in that Bears game, but injured, and then missed the Chargers game, missed the Raiders game. They are a different team without Jalen Carter, especially against the run. Keep in mind, before the 3-game losing skid, they barely beat the Packers and the Lions in back-to-back games where they couldn't score. I think that's the Philly team we're getting. We're not getting a great Philadelphia Eagles team right now. We're getting a good team, and with the pieces they have and the experience they have, you certainly wouldn't be shocked if they got on a roll, and as they got healthier towards the end of the season and into the postseason, became a force again. But right now, hitting them in this moment is probably a nice time to hit them. If winning the game is of interest to you, and I know with many of you, it is not. You want the loss. You want the competitive loss. By the way, Philly's division title basically is in the bag. They'd have to get swept, and Dallas would have to win their final 3 for Dallas to win the division. Philly's got Washington twice. They do play at Buffalo next week. So if they were to lose tomorrow and then go and lose to Buffalo, and Dallas were, I don't know if they can win 2 straight. They play the Chargers on Sunday at home, and then they play Washington on Christmas Day. But I'm sure the Eagles would prefer it not come down to the final game of the season against Washington. So they'll be looking to clinch the division with a win tomorrow. But they're not a great team right now, and they're an ailing team right now with some key misses along the offensive line, and of course, Jalen Carter. But what they do have still is better than what Washington has. So let's look at this. First of all, the Eagles have been run on recently, not the Raiders. I almost want to take the Raiders game and toss it. It's just the Raiders are so bad. The Chargers on that Monday night ran the football against the Eagles. They ran it for 169 yards, 38 attempts, 4.4 yards per carry. Justin Herbert was a big part of the run game as a scrambler and as a zone read quarterback. He rushed for 66 yards. Hampton, the rookie from North Carolina, was back for that game. Remember, he got hurt against us and missed a bunch of games, came back. He was 13 for 56. And then Vidal, the other running back, was 14 for 44. So they averaged 4.5 yards per carry. It was a big part of why they were able to beat the Eagles. Remember, the game before that, Philadelphia gave up against the Chicago Bears with an ailing Jalen Carter in the game. But they gave up 281 yards on the ground in that Black Friday game. Manon Guy, the rookie from Rutgers, 130 yards on 22 carries. What a back he's turned into. DeAndre Swift, 18 for 125. They had two backs go over 100 yards in that game. Could Rodriguez and Bill each go for over 100 against Philadelphia? The Eagles have given up yards on the ground going back to the blown 21-0 lead against Dallas. Dallas's running backs in that game, Javonte Williams and the other kid, number 43, went for $111 on 23 carries. To me, this is the hope. Last week, they focused on and emphasized and committed to the run against the Giants, and it really made everything else easy against what Suter called a very vanilla defense. Philadelphia is not vanilla with Vic Fangio. This is different, clearly always is. But at least Jalen Carter's not there. But you've got to run the football and play ahead of the sticks if you're going to have a chance tomorrow. Because if you get into drop back mode against Philadelphia, forget it. First of all, you will have a hard time getting anybody open against their corners and their secondary. And secondly, yes, I like their pass protection. I like their offensive line, but no Laramie Tunsil tomorrow. Remember that. So you can't win a game in which you've got to drop Mariota back. Play action, yes, off the run game. Play action under center, play action from shotgun, play action from pistol, whatever it is. I liked the play action last week. It was very effective, and there were big windows to throw the ball last week. You won't have those against Philadelphia. You've got to get that 3 and 4 yards to keep ahead of the sticks so it's 3rd and 2. And run's got to be an option, and Mariota's got to be a big part of the run game. Even though I don't want to take anything from the Raiders game and looking at the Eagles, I did catch this next-gen stat that the Eagles did not miss in the game a single tackle against the Raiders. So run the football, stay ahead of the sticks, and do what you did last week. Control it, win time of possession, run more offensive plays. You've got a chance that way. Number 2, red zone defense will be paramount. I do think that the Eagles are going to move the football, and they've struggled here and there offensively. We've seen it if you've watched Philadelphia this year. Not every game looks great with the Eagles offensively, but Washington's a bad defensive football team, as the Raiders were for the Eagles last week. So the Eagles, aren't playing the Chargers or even the Bears or the Lions or Packers, some of their opponents here in the last 6 weeks. They're playing Washington. They're going to move the football between the 20s, and then you've got to stop them in the red zone. You got to hold them to field goals. Washington's been, okay, in recent, weeks. The Miami game being the best in terms of their red zone defense. Last week, really good red zone defense. So red zone defense, forcing field goals, keeps Washington in a winnable game. Number 3, special teams are huge, man, for Washington. That was a big part of last week. Not just the kick return by Jalen Lane. He had another return for 21 yards. Tress Way had a 55-yard punt with Jeremy Reeves on the other end, stopping the returner for -3. That's net 58 yards on a punt. That started that end of half sequence in which Washington went from being up 13-7 to up 22-7 at halftime. Special teams will be big in this game. Philadelphia's got a very good returner in Covey. The kicking game's been fine, but it's that hidden yardage, piece tomorrow that will play big if Washington's going to have a chance to win the game. Tressway's been a machine. They really have to re-sign him. I don't want another punter. I want Tressway to be the punter. Their kick coverage and their punt coverage, kickoff and punt coverage, have been outstanding under Larry Izzo. And tomorrow's one of those days where if you can add another big return to excellent coverage, and yeah, of course, it'd be nice if Jake Moody makes whatever he looks at and doesn't miss anything like last week, missing a PAT. But I think this hidden yardage game is going to be a big deal tomorrow in Philly. And I think Washington can win that part of the game. I do. Jalen Lane is a legit returner. You got to get stops, and you got to get stops not at midfield before a punt. You got to get stops when the team's inside their own 30, to get a really good look at a return. And there haven't been enough of those for him this year because the defense hasn't really stopped anybody inside their own 30, not, consistently enough. But I think special teams and a guy like Jalen Lane and coverage and that hidden yardage will be big in the game tomorrow. And then lastly, this has been the case with them all year long because they've essentially gone into most games as underdogs and as the lesser talented team overall. They've got to play a clean game. Last week they didn't play a clean game. They're fortunate that they were playing the Giants because they put the ball on the ground twice at the end of the game. They had 11 penalties in the game. 11 penalties and 2 turnovers. Losing the turnover battle is absolutely a death sentence against Philadelphia. Even though last year, if you recall, in their second meeting, regular season meeting, very much right around this date, right? I think it was, December 20-something. Washington overcame 5 turnovers and -3 in the turnover margin category to beat the Eagles 36-33. There were different circumstances in that game. First of all, we had a different quarterback. Secondly, they had a different quarterback after the first quarter. But Washington, what they did to Philadelphia in that comeback win 36-33 was truly amazing when you consider how well Philadelphia had been starting to play defensively. That was as they were getting into that mode of being the best defensive team in football. I mean, they were annihilating people defensively. They had done it to Washington, remember, in that Thursday night game up in Philly. But won't happen tomorrow. You start making penalties and you start getting behind the chains and you hand the ball and drop the ball on the ground once or twice or have it stripped once or twice or throw a pick or two, it's going to be a whole lot to a little bit. But I think they can hang in there. I think last week we saw a commitment to the run. I think Philadelphia has been giving up some yards on the ground with no Jalen Carter in the game. And I think that's their, that can happen. I think Bill and Rodriguez is back. I think they can have a day. Something like I said last week, I need 33 plus carries, which would include the quarterback. Need the same thing tomorrow. And again, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 27 from the running backs, Rodriguez, Krosky Merritt, Jeremy McNichols, and you got to be in that 150 range of rushing yardage. If you have that number, if we look at that number, that's the first number you go to if you don't watch the game, and they're at 33 plus carries for 150 plus rushing yards, the game was at least close. At the very least, it was close. All right. I'll have a prediction later. We'll get one from Max as well. When we come back, we will start to go around the NFL. Huge games this weekend. Get Max started on getting us into the Saturday night game and then the other big games on Sunday. Got smell test next hour. We have a couple of guests in the a little bit later on in the show, including Ben Standing, somebody from JMU to talk about the Duke's chances, and someone from Philadelphia as well to talk about the Eagles. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. What I got Nikola Jokic, the Joker last night, set the NBA record for assists by a center. He had 13 assists in Denver's win over Orlando last night. Another triple-double, by the way. He's got 13 triple-doubles on the season. But he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most assists by a center in NBA history. He's now broken Jabbar's record. He had 5,660 career assists, which is just phenomenal. I think Jokic is the greatest passing big man in NBA history. I think he's the best I've ever seen. Sabonis, we didn't get to see him until the end of his career. Walton, certainly for much of my lifetime, was the best passing big man of all time, without question. But I think Jokic is the king. He's the best because he's a passer where you've got to guard him from wherever he's passing from. He can pass from the post. He can pass from the low post, high post. He can pass from behind the arc, which is something that Kareem never did or could do, and Walton didn't do or couldn't do. The other thing with Jokic, he's now at 177 triple-doubles for his career. He's going to eventually pass Russell Westbrook. He's only 30 triple-doubles behind Russell Westbrook. So he's going to become the all-time triple-double leader in NBA history as well. And you've got to go all the way down to number 9 on the list for Wilt Chamberlain to find a center in the conversation. Russell Westbrook's number 1 in all-time triple-doubles. Remember, he passed the great Big O, Oscar Robertson. And then Magic is 4th. Jokic passed Magic last year. LeBron's 5th. Jason Kidd 6th. Luka is 7th. James Harden 8th. So all, guards and forwards before you get to Wilt at 9. Wilt's the only other big man really anywhere near this list in terms of triple-doubles. So Jokic, all-time leader in assists for a center, and he will likely, not this year, but maybe next year, pass Russell Westbrook on the all-time triple-double list. I've said this before about Jokic, that I know a lot of people don't necessarily love the NBA, especially during the regular season, but we are watching one of the greatest players in NBA history. He's going to go down as one of the top 5, 6, 7 players ever. He'll be in the greatest conversation of greatest centers ever when his career is over. And he's only 30 years old. He's only 30 years old. He's got 5, 6, 7 years easy left in his career. When he is done, he's going to be considered one of the all-time greatest to ever do it. It's a sport that certainly gets judged a lot more than others on championships. He's got 1 ring. It would be nice for him to get another at least. It's going to be awfully hard to do that in the West, where Oklahoma City is just a dominant team and looks like they're not going to stop being dominant for years to come. I mean, this is a dynasty in the making in Oklahoma City, but can they take advantage of one of those years in the next 4 or 5 where OKC suffers a bunch of injuries and isn't the same team and is gettable? Because they're not going to be gettable very often. But, the team that can get them in a best of 7, out west would be Denver. That's the team that could do it. And they had a great series last year, a phenomenal series in the postseason last year, a series in which Denver was actually leading that postseason series. I think it was 2-1. They were up, and they were up in game 4 at home and just couldn't close it out. And they ended up losing in 7 to Oklahoma City. We'll probably see another matchup when we get to late May in the Western Conference again. But man, is Jokic special to watch. Every night, it's just an absolute show. All right. When we come back, we'll get to the NFL games because we were a little tight on time to start it there, but we'll get to it next hour. But Jack Fritz from WIP Radio in Philadelphia, he covers the Eagles. He'll be our guest next. Tomorrow, 5 p.m., Landover. Eagles, Washington. First of two over the final 3 weeks. Not exactly what we were hoping the games would be, meaning back when the schedule came out. But Philly can clinch the division tomorrow with a win or a Cowboys loss on Sunday. They're in the driver's seat after Dallas has dropped the last two. Jack Fritz is an afternoon show host at the legendary WIP in Philadelphia. He joins us right now. You can follow Jack on X, on Twitter, at Jack Fritz WIP. Jack, thanks. Appreciate you making time for me. So, it's been like an up and down season. There have been those moments where they lost those 2 games back, I think, in October. And it was, is this going to revert to 2023? Then they got on a roll. Then they lost 3 in a row that started with the 21-0 blown lead at Dallas. And it's like, what's Philadelphia right now? So I'll just start there. What are the Eagles right now? Are they a legit contender, or are they just going to be a, one-and-done playoff team?
So I think they're a legit contender, but I think that more has to do with the state of the NFC rather than how great the Eagles are. What are the Eagles? They are a defensive-led football team with an offense that for a majority of the season can't get out of its own way. They can't run the football. Offensive line isn't as dominant as last year. And, when things aren't all in the right place for Jalen, you're kind of learning that maybe he's not someone that you can just, put the whole offense on and he can carry you through. Seems like they need a lot of things going his way. So they could be a team with all the talent that they have that is kind of going through the regular season and now they're going to click and here we go. But honestly, well, we asked on the afternoon show 2 times this week about the game over the Raiders. Like, was that the moment where they clicked for you? Or do you think that it was just the Raiders and you don't know what to feel? Every poll was 50-50. So I think that even we don't really know what to make of this Eagles team. And I think there's some real trepidation about them.
What do you think? Because that Raiders team is horrible. It's interesting, Jack. Before Washington played at Arrowhead this year on Monday Night Football, the Chiefs destroyed the Raiders the week before, 31-0, 30 first downs to 3, like a 4-1 yardage. It was just one of the most statistical dominating performances you've ever seen when reading a box score. And your game against the Raiders, identical score, 31-0, same kind of thing. It was like 27-7 first downs. The yardage, you held them to like 75 yards. And you're coming to Washington, so the Skins get the Eagles and the Chiefs off of easy wins over the Raiders. But you watched it. What do you think? Do you think it's just the Raiders, or do you think maybe they found something?
Yeah, I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical of this team, even in that win. And there were some moments where they were able to run the football, but they still got stopped a good amount against a Raiders defense that I felt like gave up. The Raiders, one of the worst teams I've seen ever come in here. I could probably on one hand, I can count the amount of bad teams like the Raiders that have come in here and played. It was a truly dreadful effort. It was snowing. It felt like 8 degrees out. So that felt like a game that they could not wait to get out of Philadelphia about. So I'm definitely still skeptical because I don't think they can run the ball. And if they can't run the ball, I don't know how far they're going to be able to go in the playoffs. I don't know if that's something they can just turn on once Lane Johnson is back, because even when Lane was in there, they still were not able to run the football. So I'm definitely still skeptical. I think the Raiders, they're starting to show some more creativity on offense in the passing game, but ultimately that's a moot point if they can't run the football. So I'm still skeptical about this team.
Is the creativity in the passing game just that all of a sudden, starting with, I don't know, maybe the Dallas game, they just started targeting A.J. Brown a lot more than they had?
No, well, I mean, AJ, I think certainly was not happy about his usage in the offense. And I think the creativity came from, they're keeping it simple all year. Their main goal on offense, I mean, I don't know if this is a modern offense, but their main goal on offense is to simply not turn the football over, which is fine, but it also limits your ceiling as a team. So I think that they got to a point where we can't run the ball. we got to kind of let Jalen go here. And if we're going to win, we're going to throw everything we're going to open this whole thing up, see if he can handle it, and almost like sink or swim with him. So I think it was a product of not being able to run the ball. The passing concepts were super, super simple because they didn't want to turn the football over. But I think it came down to, it's our only chance to win this year is by doing the crossing routes and little things like that, and putting more on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts, and we'll see if he's able to do it.
I think he's such an interesting conversation, Jack, because I mean, you have, every snap that you guys have watched over the course of his career from afar, or not that far, from an NFC East rival city, and seeing him a lot. I've always thought, man, there are games and it's like he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. But then if it's a big game and a big moment, he just consistently delivers. I mean, even in that Chargers game, that 3rd and 17 throw to Smith in overtime when they were dead to right. I mean, that was a big time throw. I know he ended up throwing that pick, but I thought you guys were going to go down and win the game. I just had that kind of confidence in him in that moment. Describe the way you guys think about Jalen Hurts.
Well, there's a difference between, I think, how some of the fans think and how I think about Jalen. Like, I think Jalen's fine. I do think he's mostly a product of what's around him, but I do think he does exude a lot of winner vibes, which I can't discredit him for. Now, there's some people here who think he's the best quarterback in football and he's a winner and he's the next Brady. And that's where I think we've jumped the shark a little bit. I think he's in the 8 to 12 range of quarterbacks, but he is someone with the game on the line that I think everyone has confidence in coming through. And I totally agree with you. That Chargers game, I was shocked he threw that pick. I was totally shocked he threw it. You rarely, I can count on, again, one hand the amount of times I've seen him do that. He's never really done that. So he definitely has winner qualities, but I think when the defense is a top 5 unit, that really helps. When he has a great running game, that really helps. When the offensive line's clicking, and obviously the weapons on the outside, that's the main reason why they've won a lot of football games. But when he doesn't turn the football over, and it's not, I don't know why it's become so negative. Like, if he can just manage the game and play efficient football, and like that Raiders game, he was 12 of 15 for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Could have been 4 if Goddard catches it. That's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine. So, I think that a lot of the common sense Eagles fan, I think, views him as, 8 to 12.
Are there any of those?
Well, listen, harder and harder to find. We're getting a little chesty up here. We're getting a little chesty. We win 2 Super Bowls, and now it's like, now we're big brothers. So it's a really, really weird time to be an Eagles fan where we have confidence in the football team.
Yeah, brotherly love, big brother. I mean, for all of those years when you guys basically had no Lombardis and the rest of the division, had multiples, it wasn't that way. But look, I mean, it's been an incredible run here over the last 4 or 5 years. Legit Super Bowl contenders basically every year. I know that it fell apart at the end of 23, but you were 10-1 in that season. Real quickly about that Charger game, he had 4 picks in that game, and I didn't think he played badly. I thought that 2 of them weren't his fault. A.J. Brown dropped 2 passes, including a touchdown pass. I actually thought you saw him in that game saying, all right, I'm going to sling it a little bit. I'm going to let it go. And it didn't work out for him, but I thought it could have worked out for him.
Well, yeah, and you started to see some of the new wrinkles on the offense where they were opening things up, and I think it's one of those things that maybe as he gets comfortable down the stretch here, the Chargers game could have been the start of it, because I agree with you. Like, there was some good things in there. AJ had an alligator armed one of those, like you said. Second one, Devontae slipped down, so that hurt him. And it seems like a lot of these quarterbacks are getting baited by the defensive tackle that drops into coverage. You saw all that happen with Darnold last night. Mahomes got fooled by it. Jalen got fooled by it. So, that could just be a wrinkle in modern defenses that quarterbacks haven't seen yet. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't as disastrous, I think, as
I didn't think so.
People here made it for sure.
So the one thing that I've kind of looked at, and I think, we get to see pretty much all of your games, and certainly the last few, the Cowboy game, the Bears game, the Chargers game for sure, is that without Jalen Carter, or without a healthy Jalen Carter, because he played in that Bears game but wasn't healthy, it looks like that you can run the football against Philadelphia. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, so that's been one of the most interesting parts of the season. The defense is really good, but they have had spurts where they haven't been able to stop the run. And even with Jalen Carter in there, Jalen Carter's had a really weird year. I think he's been dealing with that shoulder all year, and they finally gave him that rest and hoping that for the playoffs he's good to go and back to being prime Jalen Carter. So it's been something really this whole year that they haven't been able to get right. Jordan Davis has had a good year, Moro Ojomo, but I'm not sure how good the edges have been against the run. Nakobe Dean coming back really did solidify it there for a little bit, but he was out there in that Bears game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a little bit of a problem, but we'll see how big of a problem. I mean, the Washington running backs, I don't know how. I mean, I like Bill too, but we'll see. We'll see if they're able to run the ball. But yeah, it's been a low key. It's been a low key worry.
What Chicago did on Black Friday was stunning. Chicago's turned into a really good rush offense, and it's what's making them, I think, much more of a contender than anybody thought maybe a few weeks ago. But that was a shocking result.
Yeah, it's very rare that you see the Eagles get bullied in their own house, and they got bullied in that game. And actually, it reminded me of the Niners game in 23 where they came in and just took the Eagles lunch. But good for them. They did bounce back off of that and didn't let it totally crush the season. But it was definitely surprising. And certainly the Bears being some physical football team with the hot shot coordinator and Caleb Williams was not something that I had on my bingo card.
Yeah. We're talking to Jack Fritz from WIP Radio in Philadelphia. So what's the view from there about what's happened here this year?
Well, a lot of Eagles fans are like, we told you. The Washington fans got a little ahead of themselves last year with the Commanders thing. So from afar, I can't believe the Jaden Daniels thing. I thought last year I know he's been battling injuries so far this year, but I thought he was like the next young quarterback. If you made me pick for the next 5 to 10 years between Jaden and Jalen, I probably still would, but I would have taken Jaden Daniels. So, I think we're all surprised by that. I think there's still a healthy amount of respect for how they've competed, that Minnesota game, notwithstanding. And, I think Eagles fans are not surprised what happened to Washington because, again, the Eagles fans getting a little bit chesty with the current state of the team. But I personally am surprised because I really thought that they had found it. And, it's pretty impressive. They're still competing as they are down the stretch here.
Yeah, you don't have to go out of your way to lob a compliment in about competing as a 4-10 football team. But anyway, no, I mean, what the truth is that Jaden has played in 3 football games as a totally healthy football player, start to finish. That has had a lot to do with where they are, and hopefully next year they can, stay healthy and add to the roster. So, I'm sure you guys do this on Fridays to a certain extent, but, to win tomorrow as a Philadelphia guy, what do you have to do?
Well, their main thing is not turn the football over. When they turn the football over, they're not great. Obviously that's one of you got to win the turnover battle, as everyone says. You got to establish a run now. But I think the main thing that we're looking for is are they able to run the football? Because that's been something that's been a big bugaboo for this team the entire season. And, we're all trying to find and latch on to something to make us believe that they can go on some kind of run in January and into February. And I think a lot of people believe it comes down to running the football. Also, Jalen running. Jalen has been hesitant to run this year. And I think that's been something that has held the offense back a little bit. But now that it's getting closer to the playoffs, although last week I thought he hurt his ankle pretty good on that one play. He hobbled off the field and then was taken out after the AJ touchdown. Now, I know that they were up by a lot, so I get it. But how healthy is that ankle? How much is he going to be wanting to run? Is this something late in the year that he feels like he has to do to kind of turn it on a little bit? So I think we're all monitoring the Jalen running situation. So passing game kind of is what it is. Hopefully they're efficient. Hopefully AJ gets enough targets to where he doesn't complain after the game, and seeing how well and competent they are able to run the football.
I mean, from your standpoint, like tomorrow, it'd be much better to clinch the division tomorrow. You still got seeding to play for in the final two, but going to Buffalo next week and their need to win that game, tomorrow's the day you want to do it rather than having it come down potentially to the final week of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes a little bit of pressure off that, a little bit of pressure off the Buffalo game. But like you said, the seeding is still a seeding. And it's a long shot for them to get the 1 seed, but at least if they got the 2 seed, it would be huge for them. Now, they would have to jump the Bears. Right. Like if the Bears, win a game,
the Bears play the Packers, 49ers, and Lions to finish up. So it could happen.
What's funny? I think I'm more excited for Packers Bears tomorrow than I am Eagles Commanders.
Well, that's when you're an NFL fan, in addition to being a fan of your own team, especially when your team's out of it like ours is, like last night was fun. Like tomorrow night will be fun to be able to sit back and watch that game. It would be much better if the first one meant something. But it doesn't. Maybe next year's will. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, maybe they should stop putting the promo out there where it's calling it the best doubleheader in the history of the NFL. I don't know if you've seen that commercial where
I've seen that, and the Christmas Day games now. I mean, they'll still outrate anything else, including the NBA. But they really, what they had on Thanksgiving was amazing. With Lions, Packers, Chiefs, Cowboys, and then what was it? Ravens, Bengals. I think with Burrow's return.
Yeah.
But now you've got Washington, Dallas, Detroit, Minnesota, Denver against Gardner Minshew, at night. So not exactly what they were looking for on Christmas Day, but it'll still, I'm sure, rate ridiculously well. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yep. Jack Fritz from WIP Radio in Philadelphia. Would be. I mean, I know draft position is important for a lot of you. But imagine they pull off the upset tomorrow. Dallas beats the Chargers. The next week they lose at Buffalo, and Dallas beats, I think they've got a pretty easy opponent next week. And you get it to come down to needing to beat us in the season finale to win the division. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, if somehow we denied Philadelphia the division title and a playoff berth, that would make at least this miserable season end a little bit less miserably. I mean, Dallas has the Chargers. They're actually favored at home against the Chargers, and then our team, and then the Giants. So for that to happen, you'd have to lose to Dallas on Christmas Day. But at this point, it'd be kind of sweet. Not going to happen though. What are we talking about? All right, we'll go around the NFL next.
All right, Kevin, let's kick things off with the Saturday night bout between the Bears and the Packers. Bears at home coming off a drubbing of the Cleveland Browns. Meanwhile, the Packers limp into this one off that loss to Denver. More importantly, they'll obviously be without Micah Parsons, but they also have 10 guys on the injury report listed as questionable. Bears -1.5, over-under is 46.5. Do you think the Packers can overcome the injury bug, or do the Bears take a commanding lead in the NFC North?
It's going to come down to whether or not the Bears can run the football. Even without Micah Parsons, I do think Green Bay's defense will be stout. Obviously, they're missing the game changer on defense, and that really changes, their next month and a half prospects for sure. Like, they were right there, for me, behind Seattle and the Rams, and really right behind the Rams in the NFC. And now, who knows what will happen. Parsons is a game changer, and he's a big game changer. Not having him is huge, but the Bears can't do much if they rely on drop back. They've got to be able to run the ball, and they've got to be able to, have Caleb in play action, bootleg, quarterback keeper stuff. And that's the key. I think I read something where teams following playing in Mile High, playing in Denver, are 1-5 this year when they're on the road the next week, or maybe it's just the next week in general. In Green Bay's case, it's also a short week and a banged up week after a pretty brutal game. It kind of favors Chicago. Green Bay, right now, let's just see where the number is, because it's been bouncing around a little bit. Right now, Chicago is a 2-point favorite in this game. I see some 1.5s, but I see mostly 2s. I don't have a great feel for this game, to be honest with you. I think if I had to play it, I'd play Green Bay. I still am not sure, Max, about Chicago. Yeah. I probably should be. The winner of this game, by the way, clinches a playoff berth if Detroit loses to Pittsburgh. I don't know if that'll happen, but this NFC North is bunched up, and the Bears can go a long way to, clinching the NFC North with a win and getting, into that mix for a 1 seed with the NFC West winner and staying ahead of Philadelphia for the 2 seed. If they end up being the 2 seed and Philly's the 3 with the NFC South winner the 4, that divisional round game, would it be at the Link or would it be at Soldier Field? Would be a big difference. This should be a hell of a football game. The last one was too. I'll lean Packers, but barely. I could see it going either way. Do you have a feel for this one? Because this is certainly one of the big games of the weekend.
Chicago's kind of starting to win me over, as much as I hate to say it. But give me the Bears. I'll take the Bears. I'll fade you on that one.
You're not fading me because I don't love it.
Fair
and
enough.
I'm not going to play it.
That's true.
But if you forced me to pick it, I would probably just say Green Bay in a really tight game. 18 degrees the temperature will fall to in this one. But it was like 15 in Lambeau a couple of weeks ago, so they're used to it. All right, what's next?
Next up, we got a huge matchup for the fate of the NFC South. The Bucs head to Carolina for the first time this season. Both teams sitting at 7-7. It's all going to come down to these last 3 weeks. Bucs -3, over/under is 45.5. Who you got in round 1, Kevin?
Yeah, the interesting thing is right now in that NFC South, Atlanta and New Orleans might be the 2 teams that are playing the best football. Atlanta beat Tampa last week, and New Orleans beat Carolina. They're both 7-7, as you mentioned. I don't have a great feel for this one either. I mean, Tampa got healthy with Evans back and Bucky Irving back for the last 2 weeks, and that's something they've been missing. And yet they got beat by Atlanta 29-28. New Orleans' defense is outstanding, and they really did a number on Carolina last week, with Carolina actually having a 17-7 second half lead. This one's in Charlotte. It's the first of 2 over the final 3 weeks of the season. I think I got to go Todd Bowles. By the way, Dave Canales was Todd Bowles' offensive coordinator in Tampa, and was the guy that really helped to get Baker Mayfield rolling in Tampa. I think I'll go Bowles, Evans, Baker Mayfield, and the Bucs in a close one in Charlotte. But I don't have a great feel for this one either. Do you?
No, man. It's the NFC South. How could you get a feel for it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, big game, though. I mean, because that 4 seed in the NFC South winner, is going to play at home, and Carolina's already proven they beat, the Rams at home, and Tampa in a postseason healthy at home. I mean, Washington took care of business last year, but I still would never feel comfortable if I was like the 5 seed, the Rams or the Seahawks or the Niners, or the Packers or somebody like that going in to face Tampa. I'd rather face Carolina, I think, than Tampa in that spot. But big game in the NFC South. I mean, we've still got this system, and I like this system. Division winners, to me, get a playoff berth. I still think the NFL should go to seeding based on record. I don't think that, a division champion, and it could be a division champion at 8 and 9. It could be between the two of them, but more likely than not 9 and 8. I don't think they should be hosting the 13 and 4 Rams in a first round playoff game. But that's just me. What do you got?
Next up, we got Dallas, where the Cowboys face the Chargers. Dallas fighting for their life in the NFC East, and they're going to need our help specifically if they want to have a shot at a playoff spot. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they handle business against the Chiefs and are looking more and more like a lock for that AFC wildcard spot. Cowboys are favored by 2 points. Over under is 49.5. This line stinks to me, Kev, but am I getting baited into betting the Chargers?
Well, here's the deal. The line will change significantly if Philadelphia wins on Saturday here, because the Cowboys will then be eliminated, and so that number will change. But are you going to get any less from the Cowboys? Maybe, certainly a disappointed Dallas team when they take the field if they've been eliminated, if they were eliminated the previous day. The Chargers have played well here recently. I mean, really well. Both sides of the ball, too. They were physical in that game against Philadelphia. Same thing against Kansas City before Mahomes went out on that final drive. They beat up the Steelers, remember, like a month ago on Sunday Night Football. They've won 6 of 7. The one result that really is alarming, and I had Jacksonville that day, if you recall, as a smell test pick. They were a short dog at home against the Chargers, and they blew the Chargers out 35-6, and Herbert got banged up in that game. They couldn't run the football. They're a little bit different now with Hampton back. They still have that, the offensive line issues and the protection issues, but Herbert playing hurt still he's been a warrior, man. I if Dallas has something to play for with that -2, if it stays there, kind of like them because the public's all over the Chargers.
They
but
are.
I'll probably pass on that game for right now because we don't know whether or not it'll mean anything for the Cowboys. But an interesting matchup. The Chargers obviously really need it. The Chargers have a chance if they can win the next 2 to get to that season finale and perhaps have it mean the AFC West title. Denver would have to lose one more between now and then, and they do play Jacksonville this week. They play Kansas City in Gardner Minshew on Christmas night, but the Chargers are a good football team right now and are not going to be an easy out if they get into the playoffs. They won't be. What's next?
Next up, we got, and this next one, I can't believe it's not a nationally televised game. There's no late game on Fox in the DC area. So we're kind of SOL on this one. Too much at stake in this matchup. Jaguars heading up to Mile High, take on the Broncos. Jags can clinch a playoff berth with a win in either a Texans or Colts loss or tie. Broncos favored by 3.5 points or 3, depending on where you get it. Over under 47. Kind of like the Broncos here. What do you think, Kev?
I kind of like Jacksonville here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust
Denver,
Trevi.
There's something going on with Jacksonville right now. They're moving the football against everybody. I
Etienne's
understand.
looked good too.
I'm sorry?
Travis Etienne has looked really, really good.
Etienne's looked great.
He's taken another step.
Yeah. Jacksonville, San Francisco, maybe even Philly right now, just kind of under the radar among these double-digit win teams, although I guess Philadelphia is 9-5, right? Yeah, I mean, they've won 5 games in a row. They're scoring an S-load of points. They're a takeaway machine in some of these games. It comes down to Trevor Lawrence, and whether or not he hurts him more than he helps him. But he's been helping him a lot more than he's been hurting him recently. I thought that was an incredible performance against the Eagles. There were some bad plays in that game, but he just had that mentality. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Justin Herbert there for a second. My fault. Trevor Lawrence has obviously played really well going back against Justin Herbert, which started this win streak when they won 35-6. And he was outstanding, and he's been outstanding across the board, throwing the deep ball, getting through progressions, not turning the ball over here in recent weeks. 5 touchdown passes last week, a touchdown run. He rushed for like 60 yards in the game. I like Jacksonville to go out to Denver and win.
All right. Well, next one, we got the Steelers looking to keep the Baltimore Ravens at bay with a win over the Detroit Lions. But, man, I do not want to see Dan Campbell in a desperation spot like this, and that probably is a reason why Lions are favored by 7 points. Over-under is 52. What are your thoughts for Pittsburgh and Detroit, Kev?
They're going to have to go another game without T.J. Watt as he continues to, recover from that collapsed lung.
From his Tyrod Taylor-esque injury?
Yeah, exactly. Nick Herbig got hurt last week against Miami. It's a short turnaround for the Steelers. This kind of feels like a bad spot for Pittsburgh. And yet, I can tell you the public's hammering the Lions because it's kind of must win for them. And the Steelers don't have to win this game. Remember, they closed the season with Baltimore, and they've already beaten Baltimore once. Actually, just FYI, if the Steelers win this game or lose this game and Baltimore wins the game, next week for both teams, next week for the Steelers is meaningless because it's going to come down to the final game of the year regardless. I think Pittsburgh offensively has caught something here recently. I think they can run the football. I think Detroit's defense allows you to move the football a little bit.
Yeah, they're banged up too.
I wouldn't be shocked with, a 31-26, 31-27 kind of game. I think Aaron Rodgers and company move the football and keep Pittsburgh, competitive in this game. Detroit has to have it though, man. 8-7, they're pretty much done at that point.
Which is, man. All right, last one. We got the New England Patriots heading to Baltimore for a Sunday night fight. Ravens need to keep stacking wins. Otherwise, the Steelers might start to run away with the division. Patriots looking to get right after blowing a 3-touchdown lead to Josh Allen and the Bills. The Ravens are favored by 3 points at home. Over-under is 48. Ravens -3 is feels weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we've gotten used to the Patriots getting a lot of respect. Although they didn't in that early portion of the season. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this game. Baltimore beat last week what appeared to be a disinterested Cincinnati team. By the way, keep an eye on the Bengals. They play the Dolphins. I can't imagine after getting shut out, they're not going to play hard. They're playing Burrow. This could be, a lights-out performance. Cincinnati bounce back after getting shut out. We're not covering that game because it's such a meaningless game. This is interesting, man. Sunday night football, Baltimore, both teams really kind of need it. If Baltimore can pull it off, all of a sudden Buffalo is in the hunt in the NFC East, in the AFC East, excuse me. I didn't watch Baltimore-Cincinnati last week. Obviously, it was easy for Baltimore. I don't trust their defense, and I do trust New England's offense. The line is weird. Baltimore is an iffy smell test pick at this point. We're still waiting for some information on that. If you told me to just objectively evaluate the game, I'd say I think the Patriots are the better team.
So, I don't disagree with you at all, especially with how that Ravens defense, they've been playing okay. They shut out Cincinnati last week, but I just think Drake May might come out and dice them up, especially with how he kind of faltered down the stretch last week.
Yeah. Good games tomorrow night and then on Sunday. By the way, a key game Monday night with the 49ers and the Colts in Indy. Colts have to win to stay alive, and the 49ers now control their own destiny in the NFC West. If they win out, which would include a win over the Seahawks in the season finale, they would win the tiebreaker with the Rams, and they would be the division champs and perhaps the 1 seed. Right now in the NFC, you have Chicago, Seattle, the Rams, and the 49ers all in the 1 seed hunt. In the AFC, it's primarily New England and Denver, but the Chargers, the Bills, the Jags all have chances to make a run to the 1 seed. Remember, Denver right now is the 1 seed, But they have Jacksonville this week. They play the Chiefs at Arrowhead, and they finish with the Chargers. So 2 of those 3, they are likely to be very short favorites like they are Sunday against Jacksonville. So some good stuff this weekend for sure. Smell test when we come back.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's start off with what many are calling the game of the year from Thursday Night Football. The Seattle Seahawks come up big with a win over the LA Rams to take over the number 1 seed in the NFC. The game went to overtime, tied at 30. The Rams score the first touchdown. Then Sam Darnold leads a game-winning drive that ended on a 2-point conversion, making Seattle the first team ever to win a game in overtime on a 2-point try. Seahawks win 38-37. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have inked a 3-year extension last night with Jacoby Myers that keeps him in Jacksonville till 2028, worth up to $60 million and includes $40 million in guaranteed money. Meanwhile, last night, the Wizards, they fall 119-94 to the San Antonio Spurs, but the Caps, they snapped their 2-game losing skid with a 4-0 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, earning Logan Thompson his second shutout victory of the season. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office and take command throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right. 4-1 last week. 4-1 last week. 158-11 for the season. That's 63.2%. I've had a winning weekend every weekend except for one. I'm sorry. I've had non-losing weekends except for one when I went 4-5-1 2 weeks ago. Every other weekend's been a winning weekend, and some of them big winning weekends, like last weekend hitting on 80%, going 4-1. The 3 underdogs I gave out last week all won outright. The Saints, the Falcons, and what was the other one? The Vikings on Sunday night. All right. Lot of action this weekend. Not thrilled with a lot of the college stuff. Like, I'd lean Oklahoma tonight, but I'm not going with Oklahoma. The action kind of, favors Alabama, but there's sharp action that's mixed in this one. Sorry. But I do like a couple of the games tomorrow. So let's start with Miami, Texas A&M at noon. Public's backing A&M. The line's actually moved a little bit to 3.5. I'll take the 3.5 with the Canes. I think they can control the line of scrimmage. This is going to be a Carson Beck versus Marcel Reed game. And Beck in particular, if he doesn't make the big mistakes, Miami should be there. They should have a chance. There's sharp action on Miami. A lot of the early sharp action was on Miami. It's coming back a little bit late on A&M, but I'm going to stick with a pretty sizable anti-public play, playing Miami in College Station, catching the 3.5. Oregon's a major public play, even with the big point spread. It's 20.5 in some spots. It's 21 in others. I'll take the 21 and take the dog. Go Dukes plus the 21. Tomorrow, really right now, in terms of all of the football this weekend, Washington is the biggest anti-public play of the weekend. Philly's the biggest public play. That line's been sitting at 6.5 all week. It has jumped to 7 in several spots. If you don't get it at 7, and you can find some 7s out there. I'm looking right now. I see mostly 7s right now. A few 6.5s. I'll take Washington plus the 7 at home against Philadelphia. I think Washington will fight. I think they'll compete. I don't think Philly's the same team that they've been. They might, become that team as players return. Washington plus the 7. After Buffalo's incredible win over New England and Cleveland's dud against Chicago, people picking Buffalo to win easily. They're laying 10.5 in Cleveland. I'll take the home dog. I don't know that they have any chance to win the game, but some sort of backdoor cover to lose, 26-16 plus 10.5 gets it done. Give me the Browns plus the 10.5. The Jets got blown out last week. The Saints upset the Panthers. The Saints are a good team right now, especially on defense. They are laying 7 at home against the Jets. I'll take the Jets plus the 7. The Giants absolutely love this game. They're catching 3 at home against a Minnesota team that's looked really good the last 2 weeks. The Giants obviously have not. That line seems short to the public better. They're hammering Minnesota. Give me the Giants plus the 3. We move to the late afternoon window. I like Jacksonville plus 3.5. They're a major anti-public play. People don't see Denver losing at home with that defense. I'll take Jacksonville. I think this is going to be a field goal game either way. And then I like Pittsburgh plus the 7. Detroit's a major public play this weekend, laying a touchdown against a Steeler team that's banged up on defense. And this could be a high-scoring game. The total in the game is 52. I think Pittsburgh's going to move the football against Detroit's defense. Give me the Steelers plus the 7. And then, I'm loading up on Sunday's card. There's just a lot of games that fit. Houston's laying 14. I love Houston to go to the Super Bowl against a Raider team that literally was a no-show last week. So this is a huge public play. The Texans laying 2 touchdowns. I'll take the Raiders plus the 14. People can't figure out why Baltimore is a 3-point favorite over the Patriots. I'll take the Ravens and lay the 3 over the Patriots. And then Monday night, nothing's going to change injury-wise or standings-wise because Indy can't be eliminated with other teams winning on Sunday. I don't think they can, right? I probably should have checked on that. At 8-6, can they be eliminated with they're currently no, they can't be eliminated. I like Indy plus the 6 against San Francisco, the public backing the 49ers against Old Man Rivers. That's a lot of games for a weekend that doesn't have a full college card. Let's go through it again. Miami tomorrow plus the 3.5 at Texas A&M. Also in college, JMU taking the 3 touchdowns plus the 21 at Oregon. Tomorrow in the NFL, Washington plus 7 against Philly. Sunday, the Browns plus 10.5 against Buffalo. The Jets plus 7 at New Orleans. The Giants plus 3 against the Vikings. Jacksonville plus 3.5 at Denver. The Steelers plus 7 at Detroit. Baltimore laying 3 on Sunday night against the Patriots. Also, the Raiders plus 14 in that 4 o'clock window at Houston. And then Monday night, the Colts plus the 6 at home against the Niners. If you've been waiting for the smell test to take a beating, which it has not at any point this year, this might be the weekend. That's a lot of action for week 16 in the NFL. And I got some bad teams. Right? I got the Browns, the Jets, the Giants, the Raiders. I got some bad teams in the smell test. That's not atypical, though. Hey, I got this from Skins Universe. We were talking yesterday about the offensive line being, really the most positive takeaway from this past season, which is, got 3 weeks left. And I said to Max, I'm like, I bet it's, a top 10 kind of offensive team. Well, Skins Universe sent me the power rankings for the offensive line per Pro Football Focus. Washington going in to week 16 has the 7th best offensive line in the NFL. They write, Washington's offensive line helped set the tone in week 15 over the Giants. Across 26 dropbacks, the Commanders yielded 4 pressures, including just 1 sack, on their way to a 90.4 PFF pass blocking efficiency rating, ranking 8th in the NFL. It was not all good news because Laramie Tunsil left the game with an oblique injury. They also, highlight the weak link of the offensive line, and Josh Connerly Jr. is highlighted. But yeah, Washington currently entering week 16, the 7th best offensive line in the NFL. I figured that any sort of advanced evaluation would probably have them in the top 3rd, and there they are, higher than that in the top quarter of offensive lines. The key is obviously to sign Chris Paul. They're going to extend Laramie Tunsil. I would certainly expect them to do that. And then, add a little more depth. They've got it with Brandon Coleman entering year 3 on a rookie deal. A little bit more depth. I would assume they're going to let Allegretti go. I don't think Wiley will be back, certainly. So you got to add a little more depth there. But it is without question the number one thing, other than the quarterback, in my opinion, to be positive about entering 2026. Like, this isn't an area in which they have to add players in free agency or in the draft. I think after last year, it was like they could use another tackle or 2. Well, they got 2 of them. They traded for Tunsil, and they drafted 1 in the first round. We didn't see the Chris Paul emergence. That came out of nowhere when they sat Brandon Coleman, and Paul took advantage of the opportunity, and he's been outstanding. I think Biotish is a top 3rd of the league, worst case center. Cosme, obviously, when healthy, is in a high-level guard. They got a good offensive line. PFF has it for whatever, it's worth, if you're a PFF person or not. I like all the information that's out there. Don't necessarily rely on one piece over the other, but to me, it feels like a top 10-ish offensive line this year. Good news heading into next year. All right. We got a lot coming up in the final hour of the show. Ben Standig's going to join us. We'll also talk to someone who covers James Madison. We've got a little bit more NFL to get to, and we'll have our Washington, Philadelphia predictions. All of that and more coming up over the final hour of the show. Do want to mention Window Nation and their year-end sale. Window Nation's year-end sale includes 50% off all windows and 0% interest for 5 years. So if you choose to finance the purchase, you don't have to pay interest for 5 full years. Window Nation's got over 45,000 five-star reviews. Window Nation's number one, according to Forbes magazine, for window installation companies across the United States. They offer a lifetime warranty on your purchase, and the estimate is free. And that's all I ask. If you've been thinking about new windows, 866-90Nation or windownation.com, mention my name and they'll schedule a free in-home estimate. They'll leave you with the quote. They won't obligate you to anything. They won't put any pressure on you to make a decision. 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Ben's with us, as he is every Monday and Friday and some other days as well. Substack is where he writes. You should follow him on X, on Twitter, at Ben Standig. This isn't the game we were hoping it was going to be when they made the schedule, but they're going to play it anyway. The Eagles come in here tomorrow as 7-point favorites for a standalone national TV game against Marcus Mariota in Washington. I think you asked a question of Dan Quinn either yesterday or maybe the day before, I forget at this point, but you kind of suggested, what would be the time where we might see other players. Like, I think didn't you ask about Sam Hartman in particular?
I did, yes. The idea of seeing some of these players who, look, I have no illusion that Sam Hartman is the next thing, even as a backup quarterback, but yeah, why not? If he's going to be here, why not give him some opportunity?
What do you think they're going to do? How are they going to handle these last couple of weeks? I mean, they're handling this one with sitting Tunsil, but he was legitimately injured. Christmas Day, short turnaround, and then a season finale. You and I had this conversation the other day. I think they should take their 5 or 6, cornerstones for next year. Jaden's obviously sitting. Tunsil, Terry, Cosme, I would include on offense. Defense, I'd probably include Kinlaw and Luvu, and not risk them the rest of the year. Do you sense that there's any chance they do that?
I'm not getting that sense for now,
at
least based on the way, Dan Quinn's kind of answered. Like, yeah, he didn't even seem to as if asking about the Hartman thing. Again, I'm not saying Hartman's all that, but he's certainly not a cornerstone. But like the idea of any of this seems to escape him, or they haven't thought about it. Look, there is always the business of football. You and I are talking about this mostly from a, the team and the roster and all that. But the business of football, people are still paying money to go see games. And obviously Jaden Daniels not being there is the bummerest of the bummers. But, McLaurin or, obviously, like I said, Tunsil's hurt, but, you still want to see a competitive game and see the best players you possibly can. So,
I don't want to see that at this point. I want to make sure that they're around next year for a full off season.
Oh, I mean, like I said, I'm with you, but, I'm not paying tickets. I guess neither are you. So the question is, how much does that factor in? I'm not saying that, Josh Harris is putting the thumb on the scale, but I also just think this is the thing with football, right? This is where, the GM and the coach are coming at this from different ends, right? From Dan Quinn's perspective, hey, if somehow we win the last 3 games, our record is X, and then we can maybe easier say, well, if the injuries hadn't happened, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, like, from the GM perspective, hey, the future is kind of where we're at now definitively. So what does that mean? Well, maybe it means sitting X, Y, or Z. Now, I don't know that Adam Peters thinks that way. And look, the players have some say in this, I guess, the ones we're talking about, the McLaurins of the world. But yeah, I would lean as much as I can towards the future. I've been thinking this for several weeks already, and certainly now with Jaden out, it's even more that way.
Does Laramie Tunsil have a chance to make a Pro Bowl this year?
I mean, based on performance, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously harder when you're on a team that's, at the bottom, that those ones don't typically get noticed. But in his case, the reputation for a guy who's made the Pro Bowl, I think 5 times, including the last 2 or 3 years, certainly that could just factor in, regardless, similar to like with Bobby Wagner. But yeah, I think Tunsil's definitely warranted a play or a spot in the Pro Bowl. I don't think there's much question. But again, without looking at the whole landscape of the rest of the conference,
yeah, there would be nobody else. Like there isn't even one potential anywhere else for a Pro Bowl conversation. I mean, I don't know the NFC landscape right here in front of me, at certain positions like center or guard. But, I would think that Tunsil's it. Tunsil would be the only. I mean, I don't know. Is Bobby Wagner does he still have that rep? He's still one of the, where is he on the tackle lead, statistical chart? He's still got to be way up there, right, in tackles?
Yeah, he's still way up there. The last update from the NFL with regard to Pro Bowl voting, which I think was the beginning of this week, Wagner was the only Washington player at any position in the top 10. He was like 4th or 5th or something like that. Just looking at the numbers, the tackle numbers are still very impressive. And, obviously, we see some of the other stuff, but, in a broad sense, considering, again, his reputation and all he's done, he would certainly have a chance. And that's why I think Tunsil would too. I mean, the only other one, and you're right, I don't think there's anybody else that you would point to, unless you want to say like, Jeremy Reeves or Tress Way in a special teams kind of way.
Yeah.
Because the special teams unit has actually been very good this year for Washington, across the board. So those would be a couple other guys that maybe, but there's only one obviously for each of those spots.
Yeah. Washington's special teams overall per DVOA, 4th in the league. And coverage wise, I think they're in the top 2 or 3. They've been excellent on that end. And, not bad that Jalen Lane's among, I think 7 guys with 2 or more touchdowns this year. Maybe it's just 4. What's most interesting to you over these final 3 weeks?
Well, I it's getting down to the minutia part for me. I wrote a notebook yesterday for my site, and the sort of the 3 main areas I looked at. One was the Tunsil situation, kind of like what you and I just talked about. Does he need to play anymore, and why? Kind of the reason you and I just went through as to why I don't necessarily know that he needs to when he comes back. If he comes back next week, the running back situation. You can't get overly worked up over anything that happened over these last few games. As somebody who used to cover the Wizards and would watch Andre Bloch look like an all-star for the last 12 games of the year, and then go back to form when he next year started. You can't go crazy here with these last few games. But, we just saw Bill have another productive game, his first one in a while. But it's not like he's ever really had a bunch of a downturn this year. It's just the way the defenses were playing them, and then Chris Rodriguez got involved. Is there a world where Bill and Chris Rodriguez, they look and think, okay, you know what, like, neither one of these guys is necessarily a 3-down back, but considering all the other issues we have on this roster, maybe we can leave this alone and focus on other stuff. And I think if what we see over these last 3 games, Philly got a very good defense, as we know, and we'll see where Dallas is at. I think that's something that I'm going to watch. And then, it is like sort of the Sam Hartman level stuff. Are there anybody at the back of the roster that they use a bit more and that pops a little bit? I mean, I don't get overly worked up like if somebody becomes, I'm not saying everybody has to be the next starter, but who's the 4th corner next year? Who's the 5th receiver? Like, all these things matter. Nobody cares about it until it matters. So does anybody here show something? And of course, this also applies to the 2 draft classes that we've talked about a lot, where, other than the quarterback, there's not a ton there that we can definitively say we think this person is going to do, start here or play there. So, I think those are the things I'm looking at. To me, it's all future thoughts at this point.
I was looking at kind of the recent left tackle deals that have been done, and the Rashawn Slater deal, and he ended up getting hurt before the season started. That ends up being, the big deal, in terms of average salary. He's the highest paid left tackle in the history of the game. He got $28.5 per year on the deal that he just signed, a deal that had basically practical guarantees at $92 million, which is the highest ever for a left tackle. Tunsil is obviously older. He's 32 years old, or he will be 32 when next season starts. Slater just 26. But this is going to be a priority, don't you think, even before free agency starts? Because you can sign and extend your own before free agency begins. Do you expect that sometime between the end of the season and the beginning of free agency for the team to announce a contract extension for Laremy Tunsil?
Well, I expect them to want to try to do that, after what we saw last year with Terry McLaurin. Maybe I'm a little skittish to say it'll happen because I thought that one was going to happen much earlier than it did. But yes, I mean, the difference between those 2 scenarios is, of course, also they inherited McLaurin. Not to say that he's a bad, obviously they like the player, and that's why they ultimately did get something done. But they traded all these picks for Tunsil. Those picks that they're not going to have are going to be used by Houston this coming draft. So it's going to be a conversation. So to then not lock Tunsil up would be, bad on multiple fronts. But yes, I mean, ultimately the Tunsil trade has worked out. But it works out by keeping him, not by letting him leave after 2 years or having, another contentious, contract discussion this offseason. So yeah, no, I would imagine something gets done. He seems to want to stay. Of course, they all say that in these moments, but yeah, I would imagine that's going to be a massive priority for them as it should be.
Talking to, of course, Ben Standig. I am interested in what the priority will be in terms of the guys that they have on their roster that are free agents. We talked about this, last week or 2 weeks ago. I would assume that Marcus Mariota is going to be a priority for them. What I don't know is whether or not Marcus Mariota is going to be interested in competing for a starting job somewhere. Do you have a sense of where Mariota is and whether or not he will be a top priority, even before free agency begins, to try to bring back maybe on a 2-year deal? Last year's was 1 year. The year before that was 1 year. I think they feel comfortable enough now, and we know how quarterbacks can play certainly into their mid to late 30s. I would think a multi-year deal for Mariota is in play.
I mean, I would think that in terms of the multi-year, and I would think that he wants to stay. We've talked about this before, that he's one of these guys that he bounced around after the Tennessee situation ended and Atlanta didn't work, and then he's stuck on Philly's bench doing nothing. And not, in a perfect world, of course, he never plays, if Jaden's healthy. But yeah, he seems to really have a fondness for this whole situation. So the only way I would see, again, that maybe his eyes wander would be if, say, Cliff Kingsbury moves on and somehow he decides, hey, I want to be part of that system because this system is where I've felt really, at home with. But beyond that, yeah, I would think they would get something done. Now, in terms of the rest of the league, we've got to see where we are with the game of quarterback musical chairs at the end. This does not look like a draft that's going to do much for anybody. There, other than the Heisman winner, Fernando Mendoza, there may not be another quarterback getting picked in the first round, depending on who comes out. So if that may not be an avenue for people to get help, and then you have to see, say, what do the Colts do with Daniel Jones out, going to be out for, at least they have to at least have a contingency plan if he's out for a while. And, what does Atlanta do? Do they, do they keep your guy Kirk Cousins, or do they jettison him? And if that's the case, then what does that mean for quarterback? So I think we have to look at the landscape to see, does Mariota have a shot? I remember for me last year, I assumed he would come back, but the second Jones signed with the Colts, which to me was the last spot where a guy might be able to play. Yeah. He signed back here 48 hours later. So, I imagine he'll keep an eye out for something like that, but we got to see kind of where everything falls here in the next, few weeks.
What'd you think of the game last night? Did you watch it?
Yeah. I made that appointment TV for me for sure, because of obviously, with not just the division aspect of it, but, these may be the two best teams in the conference, and it did not disappoint. I mean, the 2-point conversion that Seattle got, I mean, that's the all-time, you've got to be kidding me, 2-point conversion. I mean, I know the Rams obviously have got to be incredibly annoyed and all that because they blew a lead, but man, talk about your fluky plays that happened. That should not have happened.
I think the whistle blew. I think there's a replay where, right before Charbonnet bends down to pick up the ball, which he's not even thinking that he's picking it up for, clear recovery. He thinks it's an incomplete pass. But I think the whistle blew. There's a couple of replays out there where there's a whistle that seems to blow just before he picks that up. That's one of the oddest plays and truly one of the more thrilling games in recent NFL history, given the stakes of the game. I came away and I told Max at the beginning of the show, I still think the Rams are the better team. And I think if they play again in the postseason, the Rams will win that game no matter where it is. What do you think?
I think I'm with you. I mean, look, Devontae Adams did not play for the Rams, and obviously he's a massive key for them, especially in the red zone, and they had to settle for some field goals down there because they couldn't punch it in. Obviously, Puka Nacua,
Wow.
He's having quite the week, but in terms of the player,
he's had quite the week for sure. But the player, he is one of the 5, 6, 7 guys that can literally take over and dominate a game from that position.
Yeah, and you look, he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but my Lord, he just knows how to get open. And the no-look pass from Stafford, you can't
incredible.
make that pass from Stafford. Forget the fact that it's obviously an incredible pass. You can't make that pass if you don't trust that receiver to be where he needs to be, right? So, and of course he was, I'm with you though. I think the Rams are still the team to beat, but Seattle, and this is why obviously home field advantage is going to be huge, because Seattle, if they can lock it down, then they would get that game there. And who knows? I mean, they do have one of the better home fields in the league. I think when we talk about Washington's next stadium, I know that Seattle's got the it's open, but the way it's configured, it really jacks up the sound, and something you would imagine a team like Washington would look to replicate perhaps. So that was a great game. And I think when you factor in the Micah Parsons injury and the Philly is still a bit up and down, those look to me to be the two best teams in the conference.
All right. You'll be there tomorrow. I'm expecting that to be a heavy Philadelphia crowd in Landover. If they win, they clinch. Philadelphia wins the NFC East. Dallas eliminated even before their Sunday game. Have you thought about kind of how Washington could go about doing it? By the way, I put Washington into the smell test. You always text me usually on Sunday mornings to find out who the smell test picks are. Well, there's a Saturday game. I'm telling you, Washington's in it, plus this 7, just all public on Philly for this one. How does Washington keep it close?
I mean, I think the same formula that I've been talking about for weeks now, and that is that the other team has to allow them to stay in the game. I mean, if Philly plays to the way they can play, this is another, decisive loss for Washington. But, Philly has been very erratic on offense. Sure, they looked good last week playing the Raiders, and we even saw Washington this year look really good against the Raiders. But their offense has been all over the place. Jalen Hurts has been up and down. Their offensive line is not what it was. Lane Johnson is out with an injury. So, I think it's up to Philly to not, slam the door shut. If Saquon Barkley, though, if they look back at the tape from last year and say, oh, hey, I think we had success running on the outside with Barkley, if they do that enough, I suspect they'll break a few and get it done. So if Philly shows up, I think Philly, wins and covers. If Philly decides to play with their food and not do enough, then sure, we could have a game into the fourth quarter. But I'll assume Philly recognizes they can close this thing out and get some rest down the stretch, perhaps, that they'll get it done and cover something along the lines of 31-20, something like that.
No, that's not good enough for me. If you could make it 31-25, I'd appreciate it. By the way,
sure, anything.
Is anybody else out other than Tunsil and Jaden? It's funny when you get to this point in the season and the games are meaningless. The injury reports kind of flash up on your phone, and you don't necessarily open them up as quickly. Who else might not play?
Colson Yankoff and Eddie Goldman were both ruled out. Bobby Wagner is technically questionable, but he practiced, so I imagine he will play as he usually does. Chris Rodriguez will be playing in this game. So, other than obviously quarterback and left tackle, a couple of reserves that, have been helpful. But they are going to have Drake Jackson play in this game. If we talk about things to look at, again, this could be something. Here's a guy who was a second-round pick in 2022 under Peters with the 49ers, but he had a big knee injury in 23. So we'll see if he can show anything here coming off this injury. And, maybe that's, a guy that can be part of the rotation. But, those are the guys that are going to be out for this one.
Big Trojan, as Doc would say. One last question, actually, for you. When you brought up Bobby Wagner, give me a % chance that he's back in a Washington uniform next year.
if you tell me who the defensive coordinator is, I could probably do a little bit better. But I don't know.
I
I think it's still
can't do that.
I know. Yeah. I'm aware. Yeah, but to me, I think it's still somewhere in the neighborhood of 50-50. I mean, I don't know where he's at in terms of continuing to play. He still makes tons of plays in the run game. His instincts are off the charts. I don't. As bad as the defense has been this year, I just wonder how much worse it could be if you took him off the field. But that said, we've seen the constant shrinkage of his performance in pass coverage and, the lack of speed. We talk about this defense needs to get more speed all over the place. So I think that's the challenge. If it's still sort of Dan Quinn's system, then, I could see it happening depending on what else they do. If it's not, if they go outside the family to do something different, then I would imagine it's probably the end for Wagner here.
All right, so that's your 50-50 on Wagner. What's the % chance they go outside the family for their defensive coordinator?
Yeah, that I think is the big question, and I think it's one of the when they have this whatever powwow they're going to have as an organization, I think that's something that they have to look at, because there's certainly assistants out there who've been with Dan Quinn at different spots, who are in positions and now be a coordinator, who could easily come in and say, "Hey, let's just keep it going." But will Dan Quinn shake that? That to me is, I don't know. I think that's the part that's hard to say. Does he look at this season and say it's the system, or does he look at the season and say, "Hey, we just need better talent"? And when the injuries were, a huge problem, and I don't know where he's going to land on that. But it would be easy for me to say, "Hey, move on, look for somebody outside." But it's not, who knows what that means either. And if you bring in somebody else, does that mean you have to really change even more parts of your defense because you need a different players to fit a different system than what you brought in here? So a lot of questions for sure. And I don't know what his answer is going to be. It's hard for some coaches to say, "I'm putting my plan in the shelf, in the drawer, and it's going somewhere else." But not everybody's willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I don't want them to do it for fan excitement. Jim Schwartz, I think, would actually be an exciting hire if the entire Cleveland staff gets boomed. I mean, there is a chance Stefanski could end up being a head coach somewhere else and Schwartz could follow him there. But if it comes from, the Dan Quinn tree, like a Raheem Morris, if they get boomed in Atlanta, or a Jeff Ulbrich or an Al Harris, that's not as exciting as Jim Schwartz. But I would imagine that if Raheem gets fired, he's the front runner. He would be the favorite.
I mean, certainly that would make a lot of sense. If we're talking, again, outside the family, I mean, one guy who used to coach here, and I think is at least somebody who's going to get some attention this year, would be Aubrey Pleasant. He's the defensive passing game coordinator for the Rams, assistant head coach, young up-and-coming guy. I mean, obviously Seattle ultimately got a lot of yards, but the way that the Rams have largely done a pretty good job against Jackson Smith and Jigba in the two games. Again, I know that he ultimately got his in the end, but he's doing it with, as we know, some cast-offs from here, particularly Emmanuel Forbes. There's got to be something going on there. And the Rams, in general, they constantly seem to do more with less. And, so I would be a coach from that staff could be interesting. And he's a guy that, could be a coordinator somewhere. So I think that could be an interesting one if they do decide to look outside of Quinn's system.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Talk to you on Monday.
Awesome, man. See ya.
Ben Standig, everybody. Yeah, I mean, that's when we get to the off season, the first real conversation is about defensive coordinator. I mean, they got to take care of Tunsil. That's going to happen. By the way, if it doesn't happen and there's a big protracted situation like with Terry, you will then start to wonder, does Adam Peters have, carte blanche when it comes to spending the available free agency dollars? But I would imagine that there's going to be a focus on some of their own guys extending and then signing some of the pending free agents. But man, a lot of those defensive guys, it'll come down to who the coordinator is. That will be, a big part of the immediate postseason conversation, which we are 3 weeks away from, about 3.5 weeks away from, technically 2.5 weeks away from. All right. We've got somebody from James Madison coming up. A little bit more from Steve Suter yesterday as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
It's Kevin Sheehan. It's Kevin Sheehan on the Team 9.
Steve Suter joined me on my podcast yesterday with a film breakdown. I wanted to play some of it for you. I took kind of 3 chunks and blended them into one, where first of all, he talks about Jalen Lane and the punt return and what he likes about Jalen Lane as a punt returner. Number 2, you're going to hear him as he starts his offensive grades mention Ben Sinnott, and he talks about Sinnott's game against the Giants. And then lastly, I wanted him to kind of assess Krosky Merritt a little bit after, getting all of those carries in the game Sunday against the Giants. It's about 10 minutes. Here it is.
You and I hit on this early, and it might have been the first game I watched him. I really like him as a punt returner.
Yeah.
I like his mentality back there. I like his initial first steps every time. And this is an example of it. This is sticking one foot in the ground. He as soon as he catches it, you could tell he kind of wants to go to the right, and notices immediately he's got color outside of him, sticks his foot in the ground hard, and he's getting upfield. And this is my style of returning kicks. I like guys that want to get north, because the majority of the time, the 10 yards is more valuable than you think you're going to be able to get outside and go for 70. You're going to get a tackle for a loss, so you're only going to go 1 yard. So I love his mentality, and I always have all season. Really good example of this. Burst is good. Reading the blockers up the middle is good. I feel for the kid, really. I wish he would have had a rookie season where this is all he had to concentrate on. He shouldn't have been asked to be trying to play as many snaps offensively early in the season as he was, and it probably took away a little bit from his just focus on this. But if this is enough to keep him on the roster, for the foreseeable future, he's got a job. I think he's the guy, especially as a punt returner.
I mean, that's why that's why they drafted him. They were in love with him as a punt returner.
Keep him there, man. I would want him all game sitting on the sideline and just stewing about, when am I going to get my shot? When am I going to get my shot? When is the defense going to force a punt? That was me my redshirt sophomore year. I wasn't playing much on offense here and there in the slot, and I would just be on the sideline just like, can't wait. Like, come on, guys. Can't wait. Because your mentality is different. You're like, this is my chance to make a play. I'm not going to just take it lightly, go out there and fair catch some football. And I don't think that's his mentality. So hopefully he gets more games where he can just solely focus on this, and then it can become a threat.
Yeah.
But he already is a legit threat. I mean, he outkicks his coverage here just a taste. He's getting a good job by the gunners, and then he makes that first initial cut that's great. And I'll go to my grave with this one. Like, Reeves is one of the best players on the team.
Yeah,
I'll just say it like that.
They love him.
He is great on special teams, and he is your best secondary player, and I don't think it's close. If I'm redrafting your Washington team and you make me take somebody in the secondary out of the guys you got, I'm taking Reeves, the first one.
Boom. I wanted you to hear some of Suter from yesterday, because I got a lot of feedback from a lot of you on a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it had to do with Sinnott, Reeves, and Lane. 3 young players. In the case of Reeves, not so young anymore. But I just think it's interesting that he ended up pinpointing very early in the season Chris Paul, Jeremy Reeves, and Jacob Martin as players who are keepers. He loves Reeves. You know what? They love Reeves for sure. All right, when we come back, we'll have a final score prediction on tomorrow's game against the Eagles. And Dave Riggard, the radio voice of the James Madison Dukes, I am assuming he's out in Oregon now. He'll join us to preview James Madison against the Ducks, the Dukes against the Ducks tomorrow in Eugene. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. College football playoff round 1, and you get them at home sites. Last year, 4 favorites at home and 4 non-competitive games. Hopefully this year will be different. This is an exciting, I think, aspect of the college football playoff, playing these first-round games in home venues. For James Madison, a participant this year in the college football playoff, they have to go to one of the toughest environments in the sport, Eugene, to face Oregon and the Ducks tomorrow night, 7:30 kick, East Coast time. The Dukes are 21-point dogs against the Ducks. Dave Riggert is the radio voice of James Madison football, and he joins me right now. First of all, I'm curious, like, are you out there already?
I am. We got here late last night.
So what's the weather like, and what's it supposed to be like for the game? Because I know the Pacific Northwest has been nasty this week.
It has been pouring every minute of every hour that we've been here so far. But it does look like tomorrow it might hold off. Early in the week, it looked like it was going to rain for the game. But right now, there's a slight chance of rain in the forecast tomorrow. But it looks like if it does rain, it could be earlier in the day. Talking to some of the folks around here, they said this is the most rain they've ever had. There's flood warnings. And, again, they're used to some rain in the Pacific Northwest, but they said this is more than they usually ever get. And there's flood warnings, and there's standing water everywhere. But it looks like for the game tomorrow, it might hold off, and we could have a dry night in the Pacific Northwest.
If you want to follow Dave on X, at Dave Riggert, Riggert. So I asked Steve Buckhantz this yesterday. As you probably know, he's a James Madison alum and a massive fan. I asked him if this team, out of the last 3 teams that have been up at this level, if this particular team has the best chance to pull off something, keep the game competitive, pull off what would be the biggest upset in the history of the sport because of the stakes? Or would it have been one of the previous teams, including one of the Signetti teams?
This one is very close, probably with the one 2 years ago that was 10-0, hosting College Game Day. Did lose to App State, went 11-1 in the regular season.
Right.
I think that team is very similar to this one. And you look at guys on that team, they're now helping Indiana be the number 1 seed in Aiden Fisher, D'Angelo Pons, Mikhail Kamara, Tyreek Tucker. All those guys are on Indiana's defense now. Elijah Surratt at receiver for Indiana. So that's why I would say that team rivals this one as far as having an opportunity to maybe pull off the upset. But the one common denominator with the 2 teams from 2 years ago and this year is the defense has just been phenomenal. And this year's defense, honestly, might be better than that one. Even with the names that I just said that are playing for Indiana right now, they have been unreal all year long, especially against the run, giving up 74 rushing yards per game. They're second in the entire country. And I know people are going to say, well, the competition isn't as good as in the Big Ten or the ACC or what have you, but they've still done it week in and week out. And the adjustments that they've been able to make at halftime have been they've been incredible, because in the 9 Sun Belt games they played, including the Sun Belt Championship game, they've shut out their opponents in 6 of those 9 games. And normally they're in the lead. They did trail in 3 of the Sun Belt games and then shut those opponents out after halftime. So Colin Hister's come in and done an amazing job. What we've seen throughout the season is teams know that they will have a hard time running the ball and moving the football against JMU. So they come out and do a lot of different things that the Dukes haven't seen in the first halves of games. And they get some yards, some points, not a lot, but some. But then the adjustments are made. You kind of get into your game plan and what you're good at. And then JMU just dominates after that. They've held opponents in those 9 games to 143 rushing yards total in the second halves of the 9 games they've played. So they've been dominant defensively. And that's why I feel like they have a shot in this game to keep it close and see if they can make this a 4-quarter game and kind of contain. We've seen Oregon at times this year struggle a little bit on offense. Now, they've had some injuries, and some of those guys are likely going to come back in this game. But against Iowa, against Washington, against some teams that aren't great teams, they're solid teams, but they struggled at times and had to get a late second field goal at Iowa to win. So I just feel like this defense is good enough where they can contain Oregon enough to be able to stay in the game.
It's you really have pointed out some games. I mean, the Iowa game could have easily gone either way. That was a great football game, by the way, played in miserable conditions in Iowa City. But, I'm sure you've gone through the process of, All right, who did we play and who did they play where we can kind of look at, I go to the Louisville loss because you guys were tied going into the fourth quarter. Louisville obviously upset Miami, but there are other examples. I mean, Old Dominion only lost to Indiana by 13, and it wasn't like a 27-0 game that turned into 27-14. It was pretty competitive. Washington State nearly knocked off Ole Miss in Oxford, a team you guys beat. Is there a result that you've kind of honed in on this week where you're like, that one gives me, some confidence that we can hang in there if things go well?
I think it's probably the Louisville game, and you hit the nail on the head with really all of those opponents. ODU, heck, they just won their 10th game and won a bowl game. They beat USF, a team in the American, just a couple of days ago to finish off an unbelievable year. They had a great year, and JMU scored 63 on them and made some adjustments at halftime and just dominated that football game. But I do think the Louisville game is the one that stands out because when Louisville was healthy and they were at full strength, they were a good enough team to go to Miami, who was healthy at that time too, and now is in the college football playoff, and beat the Hurricanes at their place. So if that team can go do that, and then JMU can go to Louisville when they're full strength and hold them to 264 total yards, only 12 total first downs, and 2 plays generated 144 yards of offense for Louisville. The other 51 plays were only 120 yards. So if JMU can do that against a Louisville team that is pretty high octane and was one of the best teams in the ACC when they were healthy, then I feel like they can do that at least to some degree against Oregon. So I think that's the one that really stands out. That, man, that Louisville team, they've got some first-round picks. They've got some talent up front. So I do feel like that's the one that gives me a ton of confidence that, okay, if they can do that to Louisville when they're full strength, then they can contain Oregon at least a little bit and keep them in the game. The one area that I'm going to be interested to see is really the lines of scrimmage, especially on the offensive line for JMU, because Louisville handled JMU's offensive line. They didn't have much time to throw the ball. They couldn't move the ball consistently at all against Louisville. Are they improved enough? And they are improved. They've gotten way better throughout the entire season. But can they protect Alonzo Barnett? Can they run the ball consistently to be able to open up the pass game to generate some big plays against Oregon? They couldn't against Louisville. But they're a different team now. But Oregon, I think, is a little bit different, too, than Louisville. They're a top 5 defense in the country. Can they generate enough to be able to run the ball to get the passing game going at some point in time? That's the concern I have if they're able to handle that front from Oregon.
Tell me about the guy that I watched in the Sun Belt Championship game, the running back Wayne Knight. He went for 212 in that game, and that game was close. It got sideways late, like in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, but it was like a 17-14 game, I think, going into the fourth quarter. But can they, with Knight and, like you said, in the trenches, can they run the ball and possess the football and keep it away from Oregon? How good's that back, Wayne Knight?
He's an unbelievable story. He's had an incredible year, and he is very, very good. He's a shorter back. He's 5'7", but he's stocky. He's thick. He's powerful. He's fast, and he has really burst onto the scene this year. His story is amazing because 2 years ago in Coach Cignetti's last year here, the 11-1 regular season year, he was a redshirt, or he was a true sophomore. He had played in 4 games early in the year and on special teams. Didn't have a carry. He was just going to be on probably punt return, on punt, maybe some kickoff. But he went to Coach Cignetti and the staff and it was just like, hey, I love this place. I want to preserve my red shirts. And I know I'm not going to get carries in a loaded backfield, so I want to preserve my red shirt. I want to be on scout team and do all that. And they didn't want him to. They wanted him to be on special teams. So he stepped away from the team. And he put his name in the transfer portal. He didn't necessarily agree with the coach's decision because he wasn't even getting used that much on special teams. So he wanted to preserve that redshirt year, and Coach Cignetti didn't want to. So he went in the portal and was away from the team. And his brother Yamir was on the team at the time. So he stepped away from football at all and was going to try and see what else was out there. He's still in school, going through classes, and then the season ends. Coach Cignetti gets a job at Indiana, and Yamir talks to Coach Chesney after Coach Chesney gets the job and says, hey, my brother still wants to be on this team. Can you talk to him? So they welcomed him back with open arms. And so he was a little bit behind the 8 ball, but he worked his tail off. Last year had a solid role, kind of as a third down back. And he began this year on the depth chart, probably as the 3rd or 4th back behind George Pettaway, Iowa Day, Joby Mallory as well. They had just brought in Jordan Fuller, who set records at Holy Cross with this coaching staff. So he was down on the depth chart quite a bit. And all he did was win the job at a fall camp and just have a tremendous fall camp where they just couldn't keep him off the field, that they were going to have him on the field at some point in time. He's third in the entire country in all-purpose yards right now. He led the Sun Belt in rushing. He leads this team in receptions as well. So he has been dynamic out of the backfield. He's our punt return guy. It's a great story of just kind of putting your head down, working. His brother also transferred after last year. He could have left too. He had an opportunity to. He stayed through all of this and is now the lead back for a team in the college football playoff.
Hey, I've got 30 to 60 seconds left, and I want you to give me the breakdown to the game real quickly as to how you see it. But one quick question. Is Billy Napier around? Does he participate? Does he hang around Chesney as Chesney's going out coaching this team? I'm curious how that works because I love the fact that Chesney's coaching the team. Same with, Sumrall at Tulane, which I think is the way it should go. But is Napier present or not?
He has been around every practice since he got hired. He has not been helping with practices. He's just been observing on the sideline. He and some of the staff that he's hired already, they're at practice watching. And then they interact with the coaches afterwards. He's had long conversations with the coordinators. He's had long conversations with Coach Chesney. He did not make the trip, but I do love how they've handled this. You're exactly right. It's the perfect way to handle this. They've done a great job. He didn't make the trip. He's trying to work on the 2026 team, but he has been present and he's been talking to all the coaches and players to really get a jump start on 2026 and try and retain some of these guys if he can.
All right. If I told you the game was much more competitive than anybody expects, that it's, a 7-point game going into the fourth quarter and it ends up being, attainable. Maybe they don't get there, but it's not, a super long shot when we get to the second half. How does it happen?
I think the defense has to do what they've done all year long. They've got to keep them in the game. I don't know that the Duke's offense can score a ton on Oregon, but I feel like they'll be able to move the football at times, probably get into the 20s. Can they contain Oregon enough? This defense is going to have to – they hung their hat on their defense early in the season, and then they just got better and better throughout the entire year until the offense picked its piece up. And I think the defense will have to do it. They've got to contain Oregon and keep them 20, 24 points, something like that, to give the Dukes a chance, I think, to win this football game. They've got to limit the explosive plays, and they've got to generate some themselves. They did not against Louisville back in week 2.
Dave, thanks. Enjoy this. I'm sure it's really exciting. Wish you the best.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Dave Riggert, everybody, the voice of James Madison tomorrow night out at Oregon. All right, my prediction for the game tomorrow, I think it's going to be close, and I'm talking about the Skins game. I like Philly to win 20-14, something like that. 20-15. 20-15. They go for 2 at some point, to try to get it to 2017, down 20-9, and they miss, and they lose 20-15. What do you got?
34-17 Philadelphia.
Okay. I hope you're wrong.
I hope so too.
It's the biggest anti-public play of the weekend, the entire weekend. Philadelphia, nobody's giving Washington a shot. We'll see. Back on Monday. Chris is next.